Well, thank you for the introduction. It's one of the nicest things I've heard said about economists in quite a long time. Thanks for the invitation to participate in this, the 90th Congress of ASGBI. The timing is very helpful, I think, from my standpoint. There's been, I think, a fair bit of debate and discussion about this review since it was published back in October. And over the coming months, I'll be participating in a number of events and congresses that move it back onto the agenda as some thinking takes place around possible implementation. It seems quite a long time since I was asked to do this review. Actually, it's about 2 years ago when the issue was first raised, and I thought, to be honest, quite long and hard, partly because I don't have a day job that has a lot of space in it, and partly because it was pretty obvious it would be quite a significant commitment. As it happens, it's turned out to be a more significant commitment than I anticipated. But in the end, I agreed to do it for two reasons. One, because having thought about the issues, it was clearly an issue of some import, and partly because the sponsoring board had the broad base that it had the involvement of the Academy of Medical Royal Colleges of COPMed, General Medical Council, Health Education England, Medical Schools Council, NES, the Wales Deanery, and NAM DTA. And that I found encouraging because it persuaded me that if I, working with others, could come up with a framework that might deliver change without disruption, then the breadth of that sponsoring board gave it a good chance of having legs and actually being delivered. So I began the work in the autumn, seriously in the autumn of 2012, and then delivered the report in October 2013. It was always badged as a UK-wide review. And my terms of reference, and I'll come to the various themes within the terms of reference, my terms of reference asked me to look at the full range of postgraduate medical education and training and to take account of changes that were taking place, demographic changes, changes in technology, in order to come up with a framework that would deliver the kind of doctors that we wanted for the next generation of patients. It was pretty obvious to me from the outset that although I'd taken on a big task and I was confident that I could deliver at the end of that I needed some expert advice, not to provide me with air cover, but to provide me with good judgment. And this is the team that I assembled. It includes representatives of the Royal Colleges. It included representative from Undergraduate Medical School, postgraduate deans, a serving hospital chief executive of the MRC. But they weren't there in a representational sense. They were there for their experience and their judgment. And I have to say, throughout the process, they didn't represent particular constituencies or particular communities. And added great value to the process, not just in what they did, what they contributed in expert advisory group meetings, which took place about every 6 weeks through the process, but actually coming with me on site visits and being involved at various times in workshops and seminars in oral evidence sessions. And they had a great influence, although it ended up in my name, they had a great influence on the shape of training report and indeed its contents. I was given a set of terms of reference, and they were unbundled into these 5 themes. Workforce needs, the balance of specialists and generalists, recognizing that the patients that you as a medical workforce serve are changing quite dramatically. The breadth and scope of training, the tensions between training and service needs. It's hard to imagine a system where doctors in training would be supernumerary, and actually it wouldn't be a very desirable system were that the case, in my view. But equally, we clearly rely very heavily on doctors in training to deliver service. Changing patient needs, changing patient expectations. Theme 5 was around the flexibility of training. We, under the current arrangements, we do ask doctors in training to make a commitment to what they're going to do over a lifetime, really rather early on in that training. And once they've made that commitment, there are limited opportunities to switch. Quite early on in the process, I added 2 other things to those themes. One was the undergraduate to postgraduate transition, because it didn't seem to me that we could completely ignore that. And the other was the clinical academic interface. If we really believe that translational research is important to quality of care, then we need to have an eye to the clinical academic interface, and indeed the clinical training pathway. This is a submission that came in from a trainee quite early on in the process, and for me it had great resonance with what it was we were trying to address. I spent some early presentations going through demand drivers, supply drivers, changes in demography, changes in population. But this rather eloquent 2 paragraphs from this trainee, I think, summed it up perfectly. He talks about rapid social and technological change, the way in which that's redefining the context in which healthcare is delivered, the pace of change, changes in expectations, changes in caseload as population gets older. We see more, as it were, lifestyle diseases, the potential around genomics, the potential around the impact of ICT, and concludes that managing all of this while improving the quality, affordability, and equity of healthcare for patients will need a new breed of doctors capable of leading and managing complex change across constantly shifting institutional boundaries. His conclusion: there isn't much about my training thus far that leaves me feeling ready to meet this challenge. I thought that summed it up rather nicely. So I went about this beginning with desk-based research, what had been done before, what did the Collins Review say, what did TUC say, why wasn't aspects of TUC followed up. Quite early on, we had a series of seminars up and down the 4 countries. We undertook a series of site visits, district general hospitals in remote and rural locations, district general hospitals in urban locations, tertiary referral centres, GP training centres, mental health trusts, engaging with doctors in training, those that were training with them, hospital executives, patients. We had a call for ideas and evidence that went out in November 2012. It was open until February 2013. There were almost 400 submissions came into that. The analysis of that, plus what we had heard and seen, led us to the draft approaches to training. We took those out to workshops. We then had some 54 oral evidence sessions in Northern Ireland, in Scotland, in Wales, and in England. And all of that shaped the report that was then published on the 29th of October last year. And I think the second bullet point is a key bullet point for me, that I think it offers a framework which should be fit for purpose for a number of years, a framework which can deliver change, but a framework that will do so with minimum disruption to service. Key messages, and I'll just go through the key messages rather than the 19 recommendations, just to provide a guide as to what we're doing. Then I'll quickly go through the framework, and that should exhaust my 15 minutes. So you can see that there. We concluded that patients and the public needs more doctors providing general care in broad specialties, driven largely by this rapidly aging population. That means that people are presenting with multiple comorbidities. We will, of course, continue to need some doctors trained in more specialized areas to meet local patient and workforce needs. And you'll see when we come onto the framework, the recommendation is that that's dealt with through credentialing. We do think that medicine has to be a sustainable career with opportunities for doctors to change roles and specialties throughout their careers. You know, the young students that enrolled in my medical school in October 2013, it's going to be, depending on what they end up doing, 12 to 15 years before they're fully qualified, and how different will be the environment in which they're delivering care in 12 to 15 years to now, let alone 30 or 40 years, which is the length of a full career. Second bullet point I'd pick out, we need training pathways and a training structure that's flexible enough to allow individuals to move out in and out of training. We've suggested that full registration should move to the point of graduation. The reason for that is that current arrangements, there are real issues with assurance and accountability, with some confusion between deaneries and medical schools as to who's responsible for what. Two diagrams that I'll quickly take you through, and then a couple of concluding comments, and then we'll move on to the next speaker. That's the current structure. 4 to 6 years in medical school, 2 years foundation, depending on what one does, 3 to 10 years, either run through GP or core plus specialty, and then CCT, and now the revalidation arrangements that we have. This rather complicated diagram is the framework, summarizes the framework that I am proposing we move to. So, obviously, undergraduate education, one big change there, full registration at the point of graduation. That's currently out with ministers. It's currently under consideration by GMC. A foundation program, which we recommend stays as 2 years, with a wide range of opportunities across different specialty areas, longer placements in both acute and community settings. If you focus on the circle here, broad-based specialty training in areas of practice grouped by patient care, such as women's health, child health, mental health, to allow doctors to train across a breadth of specialties, to theme their training within particular patient groups, to opportunities for changing and transferring competencies, and opportunities to combine specialty training with academic research in an easier way than it's possible to do now. So clinical academic training focused on a particular research area combined with broad-based specialty training, with the opportunity for doctors to move in and out of training at any point. Greater emphasis on generic capabilities, patient safety, communication, teamwork, management leadership, evaluation and clinical application of research. And an opportunity for a bit more flexibility in the form of an optional year. I mean, at the moment, quite a lot of young doctors in training do go for a year's tropical medicine to Malawi, do go to Australia to get a different experience. That's out of program training. Why should it be out of program? And then finally, post-CST, opportunities to maintain capabilities in practice through a more systematic approach to CPD, opportunities to enhance skills and additional expertise through credentialing, opportunities to move more into education, management, and leadership roles. So you can think of that as, broadly speaking, 3 broad levels of competence. Doctors in training capable of providing safe and effective care for patients in emergency and acute situations with some support. Post-CST, doctors able to make safe and competent judgments in broad specialist areas. And then finally, doctors able to make safe and competent judgments but have additionally acquired more in-depth specialty training in a particular field of practice. There is more detail in the presentation, but I'm running up against time constraints here, and if you look at the report, there are, I think, 19 recommendations that pick out the detail of those recommendations. The final recommendation is a recommendation with respect to delivery. That's currently being taken up by a subgroup within the UK scrutiny group that's looking collectively across all 4 countries, but actually individually across the 4 countries at implementation of different aspects of the framework. Norman, I think that probably sets things up for the speakers to follow, and I think I'm a minute or so within my time. Thanks very much.